I noticed the shadow before I noticed the light. That should have been my first warning. The very first sign that something was deeply, fundamentally wrong with the world as I knew it. Before we get into the heart of this, if you enjoy slow, uncomfortable horror stories, the kind that creep under your skin and stay there long after you've looked away, go ahead and subscribe now. Because this story is about a simple, terrifying discovery. Darkness doesn't erase everything. Sometimes it just gives things a place to hide in plain sight. It began subtly. For most of my life, shadows were predictable. They were obedient servants of light and form. When the sun climbed high, they shrank beneath our feet. As it dipped below the horizon, they stretched into long, distorted figures, reaching across the pavement like ink spills. They danced when a flame flickered. They sharpened under a bright bulb. They were a constant, reliable part of physics, a simple absence of light. Until one wasn't. It was in the corner of my living room, a space I'd looked at 1,000 times. But one evening I noticed it, a patch of darkness that seemed wrong. It didn't quite match the angle of the floor lamp beside it. It was too definite, too solid. At first, I dismissed it. An optical illusion, a trick of tired eyes after a long day. But the thought lingered, a small, itchy spot in the back of my mind. The next evening, I decided to test it. A simple experiment to prove my own sanity. I walked over to the floor lamp, my heart thumping a little faster than it should have. I gripped the cool metal stand and moved it. I shifted it a foot to the left. The light washed over a new section of the floor. The shadows of the armchair and the side table warped and slid across the room, obediently redrawing themselves. Everything changed, except for that one patch of darkness. It stayed exactly where it was. It didn't shift. It didn't blur or shrink or stretch. It was an immovable stain on reality, a defiant void that refused to obey the laws of light. It just waited. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't right. My mind raced, searching for a logical explanation. A stain on the floorboards? I'd cleaned this floor myself just last week. A peculiar angle from an outside light? I checked the windows. The blinds were drawn. There was no source, no reason for it to be there. My hand, now trembling slightly, reached for the switch on the lamp, my pulse hammered in my ears. A new, more desperate idea took hold. If it was a shadow, then removing the light source should make it disappear along with everything else. It had to. I flicked the switch. The room plunged into darkness. The familiar shapes of my furniture dissolved into a uniform black. I held my breath, listening. The room was silent. But the shadow remained. It was invisible, of course. You can't see darkness within darkness, but it was present. I could feel it. It was a cold spot in the room, a point of immense pressure in the air. I knew exactly where it was, as if it were a physical object humming with a silent, malevolent energy. My understanding of the world tilted on its axis. The real terror began the moment I focused on it. In that suffocating darkness, I directed all my attention to that specific spot in the corner. I tried to mentally outline its shape, to comprehend what it was. And that's when the air changed. It became heavy, thick, like the atmosphere before a violent storm. The silence in the room was no longer empty. It was weighted, watchful. The shadow didn't move. It didn't have to. I felt its presence intensify, pressing in on me from across the room. It was an awareness. It knew I was thinking about it. It knew I had finally seen it for what it was. It wasn't just an absence of light. It was a presence that used darkness as its skin. In the days that followed, I learned the rules. Not through any conscious effort, but through a primal, instinctual fear. The rule was simple. As long as I didn't acknowledge it, it remained passive. I could walk around it. I could clean around it. I could live my life in the same room, pretending it was just a strange quirk of the lighting, a permanent, odd-looking shadow. And as long as I kept up that pretense, it was dormant. A harmless anomaly. But the moment I let my eyes linger on it for too long, the moment I tried to define it or question its existence, I would feel it. The pressure in the air would return. A subtle chill would snake through the room. It was a silent warning, a quiet threat. It was a predator that fed not on movement, but on recognition. The more I focused on it, the closer it pressed. The more real it became. That's when I finally understood. It wasn't attached to an object, and it wasn't a product of light or the lack of it. It was attached to me, or rather my awareness of it. The light had only ever been a tool, a way for it to become visible, a way for me to notice it. The light gave me the means to discover it, but the darkness removed my excuse for ignoring it. In the light, I could tell myself it was a trick. In the dark, when all other shadows vanished, its solitary presence was undeniable. It wasn't a shadow in the traditional sense. It was a thing that wore the concept of a shadow like a disguise. Now, I live with it. I've had to adapt. I stopped turning the lights off completely. My apartment is a landscape of perpetual twilight. I sleep with a dim lamp on in the hallway, casting long, soft shadows that blur the edges of the rooms. I keep the corners of my vision soft, my focus always slightly averted from that one particular spot. Because I've learned that the shadow prefers certainty. It thrives in absolutes. In the bright, unflinching light of day, it is a clear, defined shape. In total darkness, it is an absolute presence. The soft, dim glow of my new life creates ambiguity. It creates a world of shifting, uncertain shades where it can't be so easily defined, so easily noticed. It keeps it passive. I don't let the room go fully dark anymore. Not ever. I've thought about what would happen. I've imagined flicking that final switch, surrendering the room to complete and total blackness. When every other shape and shadow disappears, when there's nothing else to see, nothing else to define the space, that's when the shadow would finally have room to move. It would no longer be a static patch in the corner. With nothing else to hold it in place, no other points of reference, it would be free. Free to stretch, to grow, to fill the space. Free to come closer. I don't know what it wants or what it is, but I know I never want to find out. Some things don't vanish when the light goes out. They simply wait for you to notice that they never left in the first place.